Good afternoon. The Maw-krushas suck. Find out why coming up after this. Thanks to all my patrons for supporting the channel. Patreon's the best way to support. Get 5% off your order. Use code MDG for Baron of Dice. And of course, thanks to Barian for the channel art. What a guy. So before we get too far into it, let's actually just have a look at these war scrolls just to refresh our memories of what these things actually are. So let's look at Gorra first. So we have a 3-up save, which is a good save. 10-inch move, which is pretty slow for how big that base is. 20 health, which is a lot, and a standard 5 control. We have our attack profiles here, but I'm not going to go over them in detail. The only thing I'll point out is that Gorra has anti-hero +1 rend, and his other attack, the companion one, has anti-monster +1 rend. And he also has shoots in combat, right? But we'll talk about damage later. Battle damaged, whatever, pretty normal. His rampage is a monster grapple, so it's on a 3-up. You have to be in combat with a monster, and then you have to roll a 3-up. So you're not. This isn't happening a lot. It's happening every now and then. And then you pick a companion weapon, if they have any. And then you. If all of those things are true, again, you have to be in combat with a monster. It has to have companion weapons. So if it's like Karazai or something, it's like, okay. Usharan, you know, it's like, well, I don't believe that either of those have companion weapons, right? And then on a 3-up. So we have to, it's a lot of criteria. So some games you'll like, you know, look at your opponent's roster and be like, oh, like this rampage actually does nothing this game. Like I never have to even bother rolling this rampage. And I think that'll happen a lot more than you think. But if all that does happen, it's you half the attack characteristic of that weapon, rounding up for that turn. So if it does go off, it is significant, but it's just not going to go off, right? And then strength from victory, right? Where if damage points were allocated to an enemy unit that was destroyed, so he doesn't have to kill it. He has just to be part of the process that kills it. He gets a Wa token, which is +1 attack characteristic. Yeah, to this unit's weapons, and I believe it also affects the companion. Correct me if I'm wrong, please, in the comments. But it's not. I mean, is it a friendly ability if you target yourself? You can tell I haven't really played Gorra all that much, hey? Weird. And then the actual best part of his war scroll, and I believe this is the best part of either war scroll, is sorry, pardon me, is Voice of Gork. So unfortunately, this still says once per battle. So even though we get multiple Was now, it's still a this is only once per game, right? Even though the Wa is going to happen a lot more now, this ability is only going to happen once per game, and you essentially give all-out attack in addition to the +1 attacks from the Wa is what Gorra does. So if it was every single time, if you could do this every time you wad, like it was just reaction you declare a Wa, as opposed to once per battle, reaction you declare a Wa, then this would be even better, but probably still not good enough to make the model worthwhile. But we'll talk about that when we get a little bit further down in our discussion. Because of course we're going to categorize these things and sort of parse through them. So that's Gorra, and then if we just look at the Mega Boss on Maw-krusha, it's very similar, right? 2 fewer health, but otherwise very much the same. Very similar attack profiles, except for here we're anti-infantry +1 rend on both. Instead of being 1 monster, 1 hero, it's anti-infantry straight up on both, which I think is better. More on that later. Standard battle damage. We have Destructive Bulk, which is just a standard 2-up D3 impact mortals. However, if it's infantry, you double it, so it's ×2. So it'll be a minimum if you on a 2-up, right? Then it'll be a minimum of 4 mortal wounds, which is pretty cool, right? And a maximum of 6. No, is that right? Yeah, that's it. It's either 4 or 6, so that's pretty cool. It's a nice little chunk of mortals there, right? If it's infantry, which is cool. 2d6 pile-in instead of 3 inches of pile-in. So that's good. It looks way better on paper, I think, than it actually plays out in practice. But it does look really good on paper. And then that same strength from victory. So essentially what you're getting is you're losing the best thing from Gorra, which is the +1 attack during the Wa. And instead what you're getting is you're getting more anti-infantry tech, which I think is better overall because there's a lot more infantry running around. And a 2d6 pile-in. Okay. So, survivability. They rate pretty good, right? Because they have that 3-up save, and they do have like 18 and 20 health, which is pretty good. They don't have a ward, but they do have ways of getting, I think, a 6-up ward, if I'm not mistaken. One of their artifacts of power. So that's a little something. Survivability is like fine to good, right? For what we're looking at, if we were to compare it to other like big monsters, you know, the ward does hurt quite a bit, right? Because against certain armies, against mortal wounds, like if you're throwing mortal wounds at this thing, it doesn't feel as survivable. If you can deal like 6 or 7 mortal wounds to this thing and then fight it with your like infantry bricks and stuff, but like crit mortals will just kind of melt this thing, right? It just bypasses that save, and then there's no other filter, right? So like gut rippers will just chew this thing to pieces, for example, right? Gut rippers will just smash through. If we can strike last a Maw-krusha and then just pile into it and just throw whole buckets of dice at it with crit mortals, like this thing is just gonna melt and evaporate, right? So a 5-up ward would have gone a long way to make this thing like way more survivable. Even a built-in 6-up, like if it had a built-in 6-up ward and there was an artifact that would bring it to a 5-up, you know, we could have it would be like quite survivable, like very survivable, right? But we're only like, you know, fine to good for survivability overall. For damage, let's look at some actual numbers here. So for actual damage, if we compare a Maw-krusha, so a Maw-krusha, this also includes its shooting attack because it has shooting combat, so it always gets to shoot. So I'm also including this. Does like about 13 damage against a 4-up save, or 3.2 damage per 100 points. So 3.2 is actually kind of a low number if we compare it to other things. So a Tusk boss with no momentum. So you'll almost never have a 0 momentum Tusk boss, but a 0 momentum Tusk boss does 3.1 damage per 100 points. So our biggest, punchiest thing is not really punching particularly hard. Even a Hack and Crew, 2.7 damage per 100 points. So not that far off. A little bit lower, right? But again, that's with 0 momentum. If the Hack and Crew has like 1 momentum, 2 momentum, then it's definitely dealing more damage per 100 points, right? Yeah, and then if we compare it to something like let's say Brutes, right? Brutes all by themselves have like with no buffs, no nothing, have a 4.1 damage per 100 points and way higher volume of dice, so they're going to scale better, right? Well, it's funny I don't have Ard Boys math done. That's fun. Right, so like not dealing a ton of damage just all by itself. With all-out attack, it goes up, you know, it does a pretty good job. It sort of jumps up to almost 17 damage, or sorry, 16.5 damage, versus infantry. And so this is with +1 rend on both of the weapons. We're getting a little bit higher. We're almost at 4, but again, like 4 damage per 100 points, even when like things are like when they're going into their favored unit, is not a lot of damage. Like it is dealing 16 damage, but some of those bricks of like if it's like let's say that you're fighting up against brutes, right? So it won't wipe 5 brutes, even though they're infantry. It will, I guess, with if you throw the impact mortals into it, but you sort of get my point. It's like, I guess with the impact mortal, it'll kill 5 brutes, right? So it's like, well, you'll need to all-out attack. Like if your impact mortals don't do very well and you're looking at 5 brutes, it's like, well, now I need all-out attack to kill the unit of brutes. And it's only, even with all-out attack versus infantry, if you whiff your impact mortals, it's still like statistically like you're only killing them by 1 damage. So there's a chance that the Maw-krusha is tied up in combat at the end. It's not a lot of damage. You would think that it could wipe out a squad of 5 like more elite infantry in one go, or like some 10 bricks of trash, or some 20 bricks of hyper trash, like reinforced hobgrots. You would think that a Maw-krusha would just wipe a reinforced unit of hobgrots. Does it? Probably does. Let's be honest. No. Oh yeah, no, it doesn't. It's slightly under. You would need 20 damage. So a reinforced brick of hobgrots, just under. A single unit of brutes, just under. Like, it's not dealing a ton of damage. It's not as punchy as you would think or hope, even again against its favored enemy. So the damage is like not really there, you know? Like the damage is not really, it's not that high. Up next, talking about utility. So the Mega Boss on Maw-krushas has 0 synergy with things around it. There's nothing it does, right? It has a impact mortal damage. It piles in 2d6. It gets extra attacks, right? There's nothing that it does that buffs the things around it. In 3rd edition, a Mega Boss on Maw-krusha would give triple Mighty Destroyer, so that was insane. That was so good and useful, right? Like, oh, 3 things move, 3 things charge, right? Like, it was very good. So the Mega Boss on Maw-krusha now offers no group utility whatsoever, which is why people are playing Kragnos. You know, it's like 3d6 charge for everybody with Holy Within 12. Like, there's some really interesting and very good group utility. And then Gorra, of course, offers his group utility through his Rampage, right? The once per battle, when you Wah, you also get +1 attack. You have to be Holy Within 18 of him. And it doesn't have to be him, I think, that issues the Wah. It just says you declare a Wah ability. Right? So it's like someone else could declare a Wah ability and then everybody Holy Within 18 of him. But like +1 attack in an AoE is really good for Iron Jaws, right? Because we're hitting on 4s. So if you have like, especially like, you know, 2 or 3 reinforced infantry bricks all fighting into the middle, and then Gorra is behind them or leading them and calls this Wah, and 3 of your units are all going to get all-out attack, like that it's powerful, right? But the fact that it only happens once turns me off of it a little bit. And also, that's all the group utility that he has. That's all of the group utility. And he's 430 points. So, like I said, the damage isn't really there, you know. So, in terms of group utility, it's not enough to carry him, right? It's not stand out, really powerful group utility. It's like good, fine group utility. But if you look at the monster as a whole, I don't think that this group utility is enough to, like, it's not jaw-dropping, it's not auto-include, it's just, sure, it's good. Like, it's really good, you know, but it's not enough. It's not enough. And last but not least, we got mobility. So we are 10 inches flying, but we're so big. Our base is so big. If I, like, it's a lot. Here's just some examples. I just want to get rid of the, oops, that's not what I want. So if we just have like a Mega Boss or a Maw-krusha that's standing behind a unit of reinforced Ardboys. So these are 32mm bases stacked two. Look at, he only has 10-inch move, which means if we're just sort of like centered behind the unit, right? If we're trying to fly 10 inches, we can't really get to this side, right? Like where we can actually land out in front is sort of just in an arc in front of us, and it's barely to the other side. Right? And then it creates a very difficult position for the Ardboys to move through. And, well, not really. Not really. They can just sort of like move up or whatever. But like, if there's anything going wrong, and this is in like deployment at the very beginning of the game. It's like if you have it all set up nice and perfect, but as soon as there's any kind of chaos, as soon as there's any kind of like things actually happening, like if I just take like, let's say a 3 deep unit of Ardboys over here and throw my Maw-krusha right behind it, my Maw-krusha's not getting over this. There's no way. With this piece of terrain here, it's like he's not getting over this. He would have to be like super well positioned, and even then it's like he's just not, like, if there's anything out of place or anything wrong, like he's just not getting through things. So I mean, like, he can like fly through stuff like this, or even flying over terrain. It's like 10 inches is not getting you as far as you would think. I bet you that fits, but it's just not. And then if you have bigger things like brutes, right? Like it's still, if you're plopped down right behind, right? If you're right in there, you know, you can make it over, but it's barely over. It's barely over. As soon as there's any kind of chaos in battle, right? Once you have like enemy units, you know, and then a 2d6 pile-in is not that effective a lot of the time, because like, are you really sending him in first to fight up against their infantry all by himself? Probably not. So he's going to be stuck in with the enemy and against terrain and your friendly guys. And yeah, it's just not a lot of... He's so big. His butt is so big. I mean, if we compare to something that's on a... Kragnos is on a 130. And so even this slight difference can kind of matter. Right? Like if I'm 10 inches and I'm at 130 millimeter base, like I can... It's quite a bit easier to move around. So, yeah. Mobility, I think, is the thing that really kills it the most. Mobility, I think, is definitely the thing that makes this very challenging. Yeah, it's kind of the kneecapper because, again, it's like survivability, good. You know, fine. Damage, kind of weak. Like, kind of weak. When this thing goes in and it punches stuff, like maybe you guys feel the same way, but whenever I've played either version on the table and it goes into things, it just doesn't, I don't know, doesn't wow me, you know? And then utility, almost none. A once per game for both of them, a once per game +1 to hit during a WA. Cool. That's all of the group utility. So if you want to run a double Maw-krushas list, like, okay, like, just be prepared. There's no group utility that you're bringing to the table here. It's weak sauce. It's weak sauce for sure. And then mobility, it's like crushingly large and slow. And even if you had great damage and great utility, if the mobility sucks, like you're not getting this unit into combat where you want him to. If the mobility is bad, you can't deliver the package. You know, you can't deliver the damage where you need to, when you need to. You're just going to be stuck. You're going to be getting charged by faster things than you. It's just a bummer. They totally missed the mark with the Maw-krushas this time. They totally missed the mark. In terms of just, like, design, like, not in terms of how strong the unit is, but in terms of design, like, how fun they are and how interesting they are, it's, like, pretty bad. It's pretty bad. Kragnos is fine. Kragnos is good. It's like, Kragnos has, like, I think a little bit slightly worse damage per 100 points than the Maw-krushas do. Slightly worse, but his survivability is way better. You know? Kragnos' survivability is way better because he has a ward. Is he at the very beginning or at the very end? Right? Kragnos has a 5-up ward. He has a 4-up save, right? He's slow too, but he has that 15 control, so here we go. We're getting into utility a little bit, right? His damage is actually quite a bit higher if you also take into consideration his impact mortals, right? And then he has that spell ignore, and so that's like another way of being survivable. You know, it's like you're not going to debuff me with spells, right? You're not going to do that kind of stuff to me. And then group utility, yeah, like with his 12-inch run or his 3d6 charge around him, right? So it's like better group utility, better overall damage, better damage against monsters. So it's like Gordrak is anti-monster, anti-hero. Well, it's like, well, if Kragnos charges into a monster, hero or not, there's a reasonable chance that it's just gonna be dead, no matter what it is. Doesn't matter what it is, it'll just be dead, right? Like Kragnos charging into Gordrak, it's like, well, you have no ward, and these are mortal wounds. Okay, you have 18. Okay, well, then what if I roll like a 4 and a 4? It's like, well, that's 16 mortal wounds, right? Like, have you taken any chip damage so far at all from anything? Yes. Well, I one-shot you, like, you know, 40% of the time. When I charge into you, I just remove you from the table. Right? Like, ridiculous. Like, it's just gonna... so much better. And that's why people play Kragnos right now and not the Maw-krushas, right? So, I don't know, man. Totally missed the mark on this one, I think. And I actually have 2 of these guys. I would love to run, like, a Gordrak / Mega Boss on Maw-krushas list. Don't forget that in 3rd edition, you know, they were pretty survivable in 3rd, but survivability was a problem for them in 3rd. I think they had a 4-up save, but I think they could still get a 6-up ward. but survivability was weaker. Their damage, I think, if I remember, was higher. Their group utility was so much higher, and their mobility was crazy. Right? In 3rd edition, you could teleport a Mega Boss on Maw-krushas anywhere on the map, like outside of 9, not within 24 of the caster, anywhere on the map outside of 9. And then after that, you could use Mighty Destroyers to move in the hero phase, and they could move, let's say 10 inches. I think it might have been more, but let's just say it was 10 inches. I think it was more. I think it was 12 inches, but let's just say 10. And then you could use Fasten, the mount trait, to move 10 again, right? And then in the movement phase, you can move 10. No, you can't move because you were teleported, but then you can charge. So you can teleport and then move 20 inches, but I think it was 24 inches. It was 24 inches. So you could teleport anywhere on the map in the hero phase, move 24 inches in the hero phase, and then charge. Like, silly. Silly. But not anymore, right? The mobility thing is really and the utility. The survivability is good. The damage is fine. I get why these like really expensive monsters don't just kill everything. You know, like how they do have a lower damage per 100 points. Like I understand why. So it's like, okay, like the damages, I could get by on it. You know, it's not impressing me, but if it had group utility and the ability to get where it needed to go when it needed to get there, like if you could do some movement shenanigans and come in behind your opponent's big monster heroes with a Gordrak, if you could do that, like be sneaky with him and suddenly be somewhere that your opponent wasn't expecting and like charge into their monster hero and like punch it to death, like you could do that if it had mobility, and then you call a Wah and everybody gets +1 to hit straight off, you know, like Gordrak with +1 to hit. Where is he? Versus monster heroes is gonna kill pretty much everything. Like it would kill a Mega Boss on Maw-krushas almost, right? If it was a monster hero. So like, you know, it'll kill most monsters and most heroes. But, you know, I don't know. It just doesn't do it. Anyway, thanks. If you're still listening to this point, you're probably, you should probably come check out the Discord. There's always good conversations happening in the Discord. Fantastic community. Love them to death. And if you're looking to support the channel more, check out Patreon. You can come hook up with me. We can play some, or fool around, I shouldn't say play, but like fool around in TTS and, you know, talk about lists and deployment and tactics and practice deploying and stuff like that. Let's definitely do that. Like, subscribe. Wow.